Everybody, welcome to Down Backyard Gardening. How many of you are growing tomatoes? How many of y'all want the biggest yields that you can get off of your tomato plants? How many of you are growing indeterminate tomatoes up a trellis system like this? I'm going to show a trick that I started doing last year that will maximize your yields and take your tomato game, hopefully, to the next level. Let's grow. Hey y'all, tomatoes are super tricky. There's a million things to learn about this crop, but if you are growing your indeterminate tomatoes up a trellis system like this, there are so many things to do. But one thing that is super important about tomatoes is that you want to maximize the amount of growing energy going to the correct place. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of talking about taking off the suckers off indeterminate tomato plants. I could put a video about that topic up right here. So what I'm going to focus on in this video is just a simple trick on maximizing the amount of energy that your tomato plant spends and forcing that energy into growing tomatoes, not leaves. Big deal. Let me show you. Now, one thing with tomato plants is you want to have air flowing through the bottom of the tomato plants. So if you have a bed that looks like mine, which a lot of this is honestly just basil, volunteer basil that grew from last year. Now, I haven't taken it out because basil and tomatoes go together so well. The basil smell masks the tomato smell and hides the tomato plants from the hawk moth, which brings in the tomato hornworm. So that's why I haven't changed out or gotten rid of all this basil that's in here. But you want to also ensure that you have good airflow to minimize the risks of diseases on your tomato plants. So let me show you something that I do to ensure or to help minimize any issues with disease. Okay, so we're going to use this tomato plant right here. You see how the leaves are starting to yellow? It's completely normal. Don't freak out about that if this is your first year growing tomatoes. But what we're going to do is we're going to come in here with some shears and we're going to cut out those yellow leaves. The plant does not need them. And that right there, y'all, is why I let basil go to flower. Look at that. The bees are just in here pollinating and doing their job. Love it. But let's get back to the video. Okay, so as you can see, I've already taken the bottom leaves off this plant. And once the leaves start to yellow, the plant doesn't really need them. So we're just going to cut these off. I'm even going to go a little further. We're going to cut off some of these leaves that aren't actually yellow. Okay. So what I've decided to do, or what I did here, is I cut off all the leaves from about the bottom foot. You want to leave the leaves that are on the top of the tomato plant. But you don't need the leaves way down in here. The plant does not need those. So by taking these leaves off, you are forcing these plants to start producing flowers, like up here, like right there. And forcing the energy into these will create the tomatoes and force the plants into producing, like right there, tomatoes, or right over there, more tomatoes. Now I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about on some plants that I have not even touched yet, specifically for this video. From here back, I've already done this to all the tomato plants back there, but I have not touched any of these up here, specifically for this reason. As you can see, this plant already has tomatoes growing on it, but it could have even more. So we're going to come in here and really, what a lot of people consider an aggressive pruning. So we're going to start taking off all these leaves from about the from about a foot to 18 inches below the top of the plant or plants. Now when you're doing this, you want to be really careful you don't actually cut the stalk of the plant. And also while you're doing this, you could be looking for suckers and taking the suckers off, because the plants do not need the suckers. I know this whole tomato sucker issue is kind of controversial to some people, but the plant doesn't need them. Okay, right here is an example of a sucker, a really good example. Here's the main stem of the plant. Here's a normal leaf branch, and right here at this 45-degree angle in this elbow is what's called a tomato sucker. Just cut it off. Now if you want to, you can go propagate this in some water or put it in the ground and have a shot at growing another plant. I don't need that, so I'm getting rid of it. Okay, y'all, just that fast. Look at how much more air can flow through these tomatoes here. We've taken off all these leaves that the tomato plant does not need, because what it needs are the leaves up here at the top. And honestly, I could probably prune a lot more out of here, but for now I'm just going to leave it right there. And then I'm going to go back through and do that same thing to all of those plants over there. Get rid of all that yellow and all that useless, needless leaf growth that the plants don't need. So the trick for this video to growing the most tomatoes that your plants can possibly produce and put on is to continue doing this right here. Do what's called an aggressive prune. Prune and prune and prune your tomato plants as they continue to grow. Leave, again, the top 1 to 2 feet of the plant with leaves on it, and then take the leaves off of the rest of the stalk, but not the fruiting branches that come off. Anywhere that fruit, or let's just say this, anywhere that flowers are coming off of the stalk, you leave those. So like for this Sweet 100 tomato plant, all the leaves from here down are gone off that plant. There are no leaves on that plant below here. I'm leaving this one, and I'm leaving this one, because look right here, we've got more fruiting trellis, a fruiting truss coming off. And then I'm gonna leave those up here because look, there's another fruiting truss right there at the top. I did this method to that plant about 10 days ago, and when I did that, there was only that bottom truss of tomatoes. So in that time of taking the leaves off the rest of that plant, it forced that plant to then put its energy into producing more fruiting branches as opposed to leaf branches. This will work. It will take you, if you've never done it, it's going to take you a little bit of a backbone and a little bit of a to get it done. But once you start producing more fruit, more tomatoes, you're gonna just wish you had been doing this from the very beginning of when you started growing tomatoes. So if you're a beginner gardener, this is your first time, this first year, your first spring growing tomatoes, I know how difficult and I know how hard this will be for you, but I'm telling you right now, do it. You will multiply your yields. Now, I'm not gonna say you're gonna multiply them by 1,000%, but you will multiply your yields by more than you would if you don't do this, and you allow that extra energy to go into places that it doesn't need to go. Honestly, it doesn't need it. So do this. I promise you're not going to regret it. Just take your time so you don't actually cut your plant. One other benefit of taking the leaves off the bottom of your tomato plants is you do not want your leaves on your tomato plants, especially touching the ground. That is how a lot of diseases and blights and things like that can get into your tomato plant. So by taking those bottom leaves off, you're doing 3 things. You're increasing airflow, you're reducing the chance of getting diseases onto your plant, and you are maximizing the energy that your plant will use to continuously produce fruit and flowers and fruit, as opposed to leaves. Everyone, that's the video. That's the tip for today. I hope if you are brand new to growing, if this is your first year gardening or your first spring gardening, and you're brand new to growing tomatoes, do yourself the biggest favor you can. Start learning everything you can about tomatoes. There's a lot. But do this trick right here, and I promise you it will up your yield game on your tomatoes for sure. If y'all enjoyed this video, if you learned anything from it, if you've got a brand new beginner gardener in your family, in your friend network, at work, and you feel this video would be beneficial to them, please share it with them. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, please consider doing so. I would love to have all of you join all of us on this continued journey of gardening together. Y'all take care, God bless. Continue to shine bright and harvest hard, and I'll talk to y'all again real soon.